This is a serious crisis. A catastrophe!
This movie sucked.
Yeah, it's far, far worse than I remember it being.
Yeah, it's really bad. We don't have to recount too much of the plot because it's mostly the same. It's just it's executed way worse.
Yeah.
So we'll talk a little bit about the differences. But on a positive note, it doesn't start totally awful.
I was gonna say they actually put their best foot forward in like the first 10 or so minutes.
Yeah, aside from this lame fourth wall breaking joke about Jiminy Cricket talking to the narrator, which is also Jiminy Cricket, that was garbage.
Yeah.
But once we actually get inside Geppetto's shop and we see him alone in his shop working on making this puppet, and there's some like I guess some visual storytelling going on, and then
there's kind of like almost like a spoken word little song that Geppetto's singing to himself. That kind of sets up his character, sets up his motivation, sets up why he's making this thing.
which is more than we get from the original Geppetto from the 1941,
Yeah.
which that's welcome.
It does a good job of establishing his character, and Tom Hanks is actually really good in the scene, and it helps that the little song and the rhyme he's doing is actually very well written and kind of heartfelt.
Yeah, so in this one, Geppetto has a long-lost wife and a long-lost son now. They're both dead. So he surrounded his shop with clocks, which are like a memoriam of his wife who adored them, and he's building a puppet, which is basically, I guess, a memento or something to represent the memory of his dead son.
Yep, that's all well and good. A pretty good, setup for the character and where they can take the story.
And the way he portrays Geppetto is pretty heartfelt, but also that eccentricity is in there. He seems slightly unhinged from decades of loneliness, only talking to his fish and his cat.
Yeah, it comes across more like he's just like a lonely old man who's got all these memories of things that he lost surrounding him. So he's a little bit kooky. He's a little bit of a crazy guy now.
So it's a very good scene and a very good opening and a very good performance, and then he wishes upon a star, and that's when the problems start.
Yeah, and as soon as Pinocchio comes to life, the movie falls off a cliff and becomes just a tired retread of the original, only overextended and done like 12 times worse.
So first of all, when Geppetto makes the wish upon a star and then goes to sleep, a laser beam basically shoots out of the star in the sky, and it strikes a photograph of Geppetto's dead son, and then that refracts off of that and shoots into the puppet. So the way it's shot and the way it's presented makes it look like the laser beam from the sky is shooting the photograph of the sun and then possessing the puppet with the spirit of Geppetto's dead son. Only it's not. That's not what happens at all, it seems. It's just gives it life.
Because the Pinocchio doesn't have any memories of being this real live person. He doesn't understand who he is or where he comes from. He's just like, oh, I'm alive and I'm walking and talking now. So it's it's such a weird way to set it up.
And then things become even more confusing when the blue fairy shows up, and it seems like she doesn't know what the hell's going on either.
Yeah, she comes in and she's asking all kinds of questions like, how are you alive, or what happened, and Geppetto wished upon a star, and then it becomes clear after a while that the star has made this happen, and then the blue fairy is just kind of overseeing the whole affair. But it's set up to make you think it's the blue fairy because the laser beam is blue, and if you know the original, it's a blue fairy that comes in and brings him to life. So it's just confused and convoluted for no reason. I did like the effects on the blue fairy, like the little all the particles flowing off of her and all off of her dress. I thought that was pretty cool. It is weird that she doesn't have any legs in the scene, so she's just a floating torso and a head.
I do wish they would have given her a flowing head of blue hair. I thought that would have completed the effect. Just something that was always in motion, flowing, just like all the particles going down her dress.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. And then the blue fairy leaves the scene, and it looks very awkward. She looks
Yeah.
like a disembodied head floating away, so it,
It
looks like
she's being sucked out of the window by
Yeah.
something. It's really awkwardly shot.
it kind of reminded me of like an Evil Dead effect. When she becomes nearly a
Yeah.
disembodied head.
I was thinking Hellboy reboot. with,
Oh God,
with-
the professor.
Yeah, with what's his face is the floating cloud of shit.
Ian McShane. After that, they establish that Pinocchio has to go to school, and unlike the cartoon where Pinocchio is inquisitive and he keeps asking why, every time Geppetto says you have to do this, you got to go to school, you got to go get smart. Pinocchio's response is why, why? And this one, Geppetto says you got to go to school, and Pinocchio's like, oh yay, I can't wait, I'm happy.
All right.
It's
Sure
like
thing.
okay, and that will become a problem with this Pinocchio, which is that he's literally just a good boy throughout the
Yeah.
whole thing. He's never really actually conflicted.
Yeah, there is no conflict whatsoever with the character.
Yeah, he does not act out. He every bad decision he does so reluctantly, not because he falls for the temptations or because he makes the wrong choice. It's
Well,
all reluctance.
I said that the original one, like, it feels like the story kind of just happens to him, but this one is somehow, like, even more detached from any kind of, like, making choices. He's, like you said, he's a good boy from the very beginning, and everything is forced upon him, and he doesn't want to do anything. He never partakes in any of the bad stuff that the original does, and even, like, the stuff with him lying later on in the movie, like, it starts as him telling fibs, but quickly becomes him just utilizing it as a means of escape.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Becomes
there's no-
virtuous almost.
yeah, exactly. There's no lessons to be learned here at all because he never wants to do any of it to begin with.
Yeah, he's locked in a cage, and he is telling lies, and his nose starts to grow, and Jiminy Cricket is chastising him for it, obviously telling him, no, that's wrong. But then Pinocchio realizes, oh, the key to get me out of the cage is on this wall, like 10
Yeah.
feet away, so I'll just tell some more lies so
Yeah.
you can get the key.
That's a device you can use. I think even the Guillermo del Toro one uses that, but
Yeah, they do it at the end
But
when they're in the whale.
yeah, but you want him to at least learn the lesson first before you do that.
Yes.
But going back earlier in the film,
Yeah.
this is about the time we're introduced to Honest John, and then the film like falls off another cliff.
Yeah, I had nothing but praise for Honest John in the original film. I love that character. That's one of my favorite classic Disney villains. I hate Honest John in this movie.
Yeah, it's so loud, it's so overplayed.
Everything is said from the top of his voice.
Yeah, he's like he's a snake oil salesman, but it's played so big and so extravagantly,
And he's voiced by Keegan-Michael Key, obviously, which
Yeah.
is just, appeal to celebrity.
Exactly, and he could be fine in the role, but the direction that they decided to go is just way too much.
Yeah,
there's nothing sinister about the character. He's just like a bumbling buffoon.
No, he's not even remotely threatening. He doesn't come off like the sleazy Sly Fox con man of the animated one. He just comes off as loud and annoying and boisterous.
Yeah.
He's very clearly like an evil villain in the original one who's only out to make a buck.
And if you want to do a different take on it, that's fine. Like we've said for these adaptations, they should try to be their own thing. But this one's trying to like have its cake and eat it too. They're like trying to do the same character, but they're also doing like this over the top version of it, and it's just annoying, and you just want them to stop talking for a few minutes, and they never shut up.
And then the other funny thing is that Honest John is basically the main villain of the animated one, and he appears in one scene in this. He vanishes.
He doesn't have anything to do.
After he sends Pinocchio to Stromboli, we never see him again. And then we get to the whole Stromboli scene, and you get the whole I got no strings segment reenactment. And as I was watching that scene this time around, I was thinking, you know why this doesn't work? Because all of these puppets are CGI.
Yeah, I guess if you want to talk about that in general real quick, the CGI in this is just terrible.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. Yeah, the CGI, some of this looks like 90s era CGI, especially Pinocchio.
I wouldn't go that far. It's just funny to me that
I'll say 1999 Phantom Menace CGI.
I wouldn't even go that far. I think it's like it's Pixar graphics, but Pixar is explicitly like an animated film. This is like
It's meant to replicate. It's supposed to be photorealistic.
Yeah, this is being sold as a live action movie, and there's not a single actual set in the movie besides Geppetto's house. And it's weird, like, how much of the city environments and the buildings are so, like, low res and poorly, like, detailed. There's no depth to anything. It looks like blurry textures on like some of the brickwork or like the walls.
The citizenry in the background are sometimes really badly integrated into the scenes.
Poorly keyed into the scenes, or like they're just feathered and blurry outlines around them, like kind of floating on the screen.
Honest John and especially his cat buddy Gideon look terrible.
Yeah, there's weird like moments where it's like hyper detailed, and you can see like every individual fur on like Honest John's body, and then there's other times where they do extreme close-ups, and it's like you're looking at like smeared textures, and it reminded me of like the Toy Story dog in the early Toy Stories. Like why are the textures so smeared and blurry looking, and why does the ground, you know, there's a lot of like stone and pebbles and stuff like that lining the streets and the roads, but it feels like everything's kind of just melded together. It looks like a first render in Unreal.
We're kind of starting to go a little bit all over the place here, but I do want to mention this before I forget, which is that Geppetto's clocks are just packed full of unbelievably obnoxious Disney references.
Yeah.
There's a Sheriff Woody clock. There's a Maleficent Sleeping Beauty clock. There's a Snow White the Seven Dwarfs clock. There's a Who Framed Roger Rabbit clock. There's a Lion King clock.
Yeah. Just to remind you that this is Disney, and it's like, oh, hey, you know, remember those Disney things you like? Well, here you go.
Yeah, they're all cuckoo clocks with these moving ornaments, and all of the moving ornaments are CGI, and they all look terrible. It'd be impressive if they were actually physical, tangible objects that we can see and touch.
Yeah, but, I mean, that would require craftsmanship and somebody to actually carve these things. And
Robert Zemeckis is not about that anymore.
Oh, no, not anymore.
He's all about that digital.
And then Pinocchio himself, I think the biggest problem to me is, like, his eyes. And it's a problem with the design because, like, it works in the animated version because it's animated. You don't think about it.
Yeah, it's 2D.
But in this one, like, I think his eyes, they're painted onto this wooden head.
Yeah.
But then, like, the eyes move, and there's no depth to them whatsoever. So it's like, it's almost like this, like, cartoon on his face is animating and moving. And you kind of just expect there to be some depth to it. Like if they actually carved the eyes into his head, I think it would like work a little better.
Possibly. But
he's just like creepy and unsettling sometimes to look at.
Jiminy Cricket is a bad design as well.
Yeah, he's I mean, I don't know.
There's a reason this stuff works in 2D and it doesn't work in 3D, because sometimes when you translate something very literally to 3D, it looks creepy.
Yeah. They should have gone with different designs.
Like, remember Thing 1 and Thing 2 from the Cat in the Hat movie? They look cute on the page, but when you portray them on screen, they look like something out of a horror film.
Yeah, that's why they call it an adaptation. Like, you're supposed to adapt the material and move some things about and make changes here and there, but this one sticks way too close to the original and, like I said, just does everything worse.
Yeah, and getting back to that, so Pinocchio is at Stromboli's and he does the I Got No Strings segment, and it doesn't work because all the puppets are CGI, and I was thinking as I was watching it, this sequence would be like really interesting to look at if these were real puppets. You know what would have been really challenging and interesting is if Pinocchio himself was a actual puppet, that they hired a puppeteer to operate on as they filmed it, and then they would just, CG out the strings.
Yeah.
That would, again, require craftsmanship and planning.
Well, I think they wanted to, like, stick so close to the animated one, so it's all about, like, the extreme movements and the extreme animation, and probably doing things that puppeteers actually can't pull off, so we're stuck with these kind of, like, hideous creations. It's something I did like about this segment is another one of the new things. they introduce like one of Stromboli's
Stromboli has a single person under his employ, which is a
Yeah.
girl named Fabienne.
yeah, she works the marionettes, and she has this one marionette that's like her creation, but she also like has like a messed up leg that's in like a brace, and
I thought it was a prosthetic.
oh,
I thought it was a wooden prosthetic. I thought that was the whole thing. She's
I don't-
part human, part wood.
I don't think so, because like she's got a brace on. It looked to me like it was just a real leg and a brace. But either way, she can't be a dancer in her real life because she's got a messed up leg. So she kind of lives out her dreams through this puppet.
Yeah.
And there's almost like a relationship that starts to kind of form between the puppet and Pinocchio, because at this point Pinocchio feels like he can't trust real people.
Yeah, Stromboli has betrayed him. Honest John has betrayed him, and he's now locked in a cage. And Fabienne uses this puppet to communicate to Pinocchio and give him something he can trust, which I kind of liked.
Yeah, there's a nice little scene where she's controlling her puppet, and in her room singing a song, and kind of you can tell it's a good setup for her character. She's living through this puppet, and that's another like interesting place they could have taken the story, but it's dropped and never really brought up again.
Yeah, we got to get back to following the blueprint of the original film. So Fabienne and her puppet are dropped from the film. And then, oh boy, in the animated one, it is Honest John who convinces Pinocchio to go to Pleasure Island. In this movie, Pinocchio is literally just scooped up by a passing coach.
Yeah, it's weird the way it's set up. It's almost like either kids run away and go to this spot to be collected on purpose to go to Pleasure Island, or like parents get tired of their bad children and drop them off on this street corner so they can be collected. But either way, again, there's no choices being made. He just gets scooped up by this horse and carriage with all these children that are excited to go to Pleasure Island.
Yeah, in the original one, Honest John manipulated him. He said, "Oh, you're sick. You need a vacation to Pleasure Island." And Pinocchio says, "Okay, sounds like a good idea. Let's go,"
Yeah.
despite Jiminy's warnings. And in this one, yeah, he just gets scooped up, taken to Pleasure Island. He does not want to go, clearly. He's acting totally reluctantly. And when they finally get to Pleasure Island, it's, again, full of debauchery, full of...
But it feels more like an amusement park
Yeah.
than like, a criminal kind of hideout.
Yeah, so that's because Robert Zemeckis has to have an excuse to show off that CGI, so we can have scenes of like Pinocchio riding on rides, and it's all kinetic and frenetic, and the camera is like
Yeah.
making all these dynamic movements, and it's crap.
Disney being too afraid and not having the balls to show like children drinking beer or smoking cigars, because
Yeah.
in this it's like kegs of root beer.
Yeah, they make it a point to tell you several times that it's root beer, just so you
Yeah.
don't think, oh, are they drinking booze?
And they go to Contempt Corner, which is just a place where they yell insults into like a megaphone, and then they make faces into it like they're teasing or being mean to people.
Yeah, it reminded me of the 2 Minutes Hate from 1984. So
And then there's going on a roller coaster in a boat, and then floating down candy mountains.
Yeah.
It's just nonsense.
And there's no drinking. There's drinking root beer. There's no smoking of cigars or anything like that. And then Pinocchio doesn't want to do any of this. He looks at it and he says, "Oh, I don't think my father would like me being in this." He has a sad face on throughout the whole scene.
There's all the kids smashing clocks, and then the kid like shoots the slingshot into a clock that
Looks
has
like
a
Geppetto.
suspiciously like Geppetto like face on it.
Yeah. And he says, "These remind me of my father's clock," so he doesn't do it. He doesn't participate at all. In the original film, Pinocchio did participate in the debauchery. He did drink. He did smoke. He did play pool, which that's the only thing he does in this movie. He does the least offensive thing. He plays some pool with
Plays a
Lampwick.
game of pool while drinking root beer.
And then they lay this bullshit on us. Pinocchio, he says, "I don't want to be a jerk. I wish I still had my conscience," because at this point Jiminy Cricket is separated from him. So he says, "I don't want to be a jerk. I wish I still had a conscience." And it's like, dude, if you are saying no to all of this debauchery and you are saying actively, "I don't want to be a jerk and I wish I still had a conscience," that means you do have a conscience and
Yeah.
you're listening to it.
Yeah, like I said, there's no lessons to be learned. it's just a series of unpleasant situations that Pinocchio is plopped into where he has to figure a way to get out of them. It's not teaching any morals, not teaching any lessons. It's just one scene after the other of Pinocchio escaping bad situations and not changing as a character at all.
And then they make a bizarre choice where Pleasure Island is inhabited by these smoke monsters that can
Yeah.
like teleport into plumes of smoke. It's so strange. In the original film, there were these things. It was not made clear what they were. It was like these big, dark, beastly, brutish things, which looked like they had fur, but their features were very indistinguishable. But they were physical. They weren't like ethereal. And they're just smoke monsters.
Yeah, I mean, why not at this point? I mean, everything else is a mess, so might as well just have spectral, like, ghost demon things.
So then Pinocchio escapes Pleasure Island, and then Geppetto gets swallowed by a whale, and
Oh no, they figure out from their bird friend that Geppetto has sold all of his clocks.
yeah, oh yeah. In this film, there's a supporting character, which is a seagull named Sophia, who visits Geppetto's house frequently, and this is how they worked around Pinocchio figuring out where Geppetto is, not from a letter being dropped from the sky by the Blue Fairy in the original film. Instead, he finds out through this seagull, Sophia. So Sophia tells Pinocchio that Geppetto sold all of his clocks, all of his possessions, which meant the world to him, to buy a boat, to go out to sea and search for Pinocchio. And I was thinking to myself, it would have been so much more effective to see him do that, to have a scene of him looking by with nostalgia at these clocks, and he holds one in his hand, and you can see like he's reminiscing about his wife.
Yeah, like you can't live in the past. You gotta let some things go. But I mean that would be too much character development. So.
Yeah, and it would also be a lot like the scene from Up, where Carl finally gives up Ellie. But if you're gonna steal from yourself,
Might as well steal from the best.
Yeah. So Pinocchio sets out to sea to find Geppetto, and he does, and they both get swallowed by a whale, and then the rest of the film proceeds basically like the cartoon. They smash up some wood and start a fire inside Monstro the whale and make him sneeze them out, and then they have a high-speed chase across the sea to evade him. Only in this one, it's not nearly as epic.
And then this time it's Geppetto that bites the dust.
Yeah, Geppetto dies in this one, and then
Yeah, through the magic of
a tear.
wooden boy tears.
Yeah.
Showing that he's true of heart and he's brave and he's kind.
He resurrects Geppetto.
Geppetto comes back from the dead.
And then they walk off into the cave, into the sunset, happily ever after, and then that's it.
And again, in this scene, talking about the visuals, just some of the worst green screen, like in a supposedly big budget movie, like Geppetto on this boat riding these waves, being on the ocean. It's so fake looking. Also, just kind of like, well, I guess we'll talk about, like, there's really only one or two performances in the movie. Geppetto and Pinocchio and Jiminy are really the only ones worth talking about.
Yeah.
Geppetto starts out pretty good, like we said with that opening scene. Like, there's something heartfelt, and he's not overplaying the character. But, like, halfway through, they just give up.
Yeah.
And Tom Hanks goes full cartoon. And all of his dialogue feels like it's just him improvising and yelling words at the camera.
This is a serious crisis.
It's Tom Hanks lost on a chroma key set. He's just walking around a blue screen.
Yeah. He's got no idea what he's supposed to do. There's no direction. There's no script.
A catastrophe!
Just the entire city is CGI. All of it's a cartoon. And it looked like Geppetto was standing in the middle of a cutscene from Bioshock Infinite.
What do you make of JGL as Jiminy?
And the thing about that is that I don't know what Cliff Edwards' speaking voice from the original film was. I'm just going to assume that's what he really sounded like. So in that case, it's what they did was they cast an actor who had an interesting voice to play a character. And in this movie, they cast an actor to do an impression of a guy with an interesting voice.
Yeah.
And he is unrecognizable.
Yeah, it took me a second to remember who it was, but if I didn't remember because I'd already seen the movie, I wouldn't have guessed it was Joseph Gordon-Levitt. So, I mean, I guess he does a fine enough job there. You know, you can't tell that it's him. And But it also sounds like somebody just doing an impression of the character.
Yeah, and I was laughing several times when Jiminy was in peril and he was like screaming, and it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt doing a voice, and it's like really high pitched. He sounds like Paul Bear sometimes. So that just read as funny, whereas Cliff Edwards' Jiminy Cricket is not funny because it's just a guy with an interesting voice.
Yeah. Whoever they've got playing Pinocchio, just there's nothing to the character. He hardly has anything to contribute to any conversations. There's a lot of "Oh no, help me!
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to do this."
Yeah, might as well have been voiced by Mr. Bill. Oh no!
Oh no! Yeah, Honest John sucks. There's nothing to the bird character.
I guess Stromboli is sufficient.
It's just Stromboli. Yeah, he grumbles and makes noise and yells in whatever
Yeah.
language, Italian.
Not as animated, no pun intended, as the original Stromboli.
Yeah. Music.
All of the new versions of the old songs are inferior, and the new songs they do have, some of them are just unnecessary. Like the Coachman has a song. Who the hell cares about him?
And it goes on forever because he sings it on the way to Pleasure Island, and then they have a big break where they ride all the rides, and then he pops in one more time to like say his chorus, and then he disappears into the ground.
Yeah, and the Coachman song, as an aside, it happens during a scene which is so darkly lit.
Oh yeah, the lighting, the nighttime scene there. Jesus, I said it's because they want to hide how bad the environmental effects are, because this scene in particular has so many human characters in it, and they're not shot far away or in the distance. They're all relatively close to the camera, so they'd be giving the game away if they put any kind of lights on this scene or shot it in like moonlight or whatever else. It would look too fake looking, so they turn all the lights down. You can't see anything that's happening. Pinocchio, holy smokio, just hilarious.
Yeah, that's an actual lyric. Pinocchio, Pinocchio, holy smokio. So, ever since I first heard it, I've been calling this movie Pinocchio, holy smokio, just to differentiate it from the original.
That's a good way to respond after seeing this. Just like, holy smokio. It's really all you can say about this.
Where did it all go wrong? I think it started with the man known as Robert Zemeckis.
This and The Lion King have got to be up there as far as like the worst live action remakes go. We'll get to The Lion King again eventually because we've only seen that remake once. But from memory, would you say this is worse than that? Because I feel like watching this like it's a worse movie.
Oh, it's probably a worse movie. Yeah, The Lion King hurts worse.
See, I figured you would feel the opposite way because you love the original Pinocchio so much.
Yeah, I love both films, but The Lion King is also much longer and so tedious.
What is it, like 2 hours and 15 minutes?
Yeah, it's a full 2 hours. This is 1 hour 50 something minutes.
God. Yeah, I mean, we'll see when we get there.
Yeah, I guess we'll ask that question again, like 30 movies down the road.
Yeah, but this was a miserable watch.
Yeah, terrible, awful. Would not recommend. Probably won't ever watch this again.
No. We don't ever need to see this again. So there is this silver lining.
So what is your final number grade on a scale of 1 to 10?
3. And on a bad day, maybe a 2.
I guess I'll just go ahead and say 3. So, if you haven't seen it, don't.